I want to mention a couple of things just to tidy up this section on reports, and they're not really related to each other. It's just one or two extra little pieces. A couple of them are fairly easy, one of them is a bit more difficult. First thing I want to just talk about is formatting. So we looked at generating this report here, and the output to the report for the various different columns are the codes which we've put here, which are actually very straightforward compared to some of them we might get into a little later. The result of each of these will be a string, a date, or a number. So you can, of course, decide what format you want to put each of those pieces into. Now, so for instance, this line here is the title date, and at the end here, Aspect has suggested a format to you, and you can change that format. The ones that it suggests here are things that are set by the user's preference. Actually, this is rather a better example, a kind of a number one, so the quantity value here is the number one. So if we look here, the formats that you can choose from are the money, the quantity, or the price, and those are preferences that the user will have set for themselves in user settings. So you can say, well, if you like to see your money in whichever format you like, I can output that in the money format. So for instance, I always have it with showing cents because I like to see the cents on the money. Quantities I usually have to 3 decimal places, which means that's equivalent of kilograms. And price I generally have to 2 decimal places again. But you can also set your own. You can describe your own format. So if you click on this here, for instance, this is saying, well, it's with these hashtags and this decimal point here, that's saying that's to 2 decimal places. Well, if you wanted to, you could force it to have either 2 decimal places like that, or you could put another hashtag on the end, and that would make it to 3 decimal places, for instance. There's another way to change the format of something, which is that you can use formulas. So if we were looking at a date, as we were a moment ago, so for instance this one here, and we didn't like the formats which are being offered by Aspect, and I kind of don't, you can use your own. So, I'll show you what I mean, and then I can explain a little bit about it. So here, if you put format date, you can open brackets. You can define your own formats there. Now, if you do that, you can put it in either the speech marks there or the between apostrophes. They're both treated as speech marks. So you can put in here, for instance, DD, which would mean for day, MMM. Where am I now? That is a format that I quite like because Americans and Europeans both recognise that. So DD says I want to have the day, and I want to have it always 2 figures, so the 1st of April will be 01. MMM like that means that I would like the month to come out using the abbreviated text for name for the month, so for April APR, and then YY at the end. So that means that for the year I want again 2 digits, which would be like 17. So I'll just run this to show exactly what it does. Of course, we've got our problem that we've got no data. You can see here that the date format has been changed to that one that I think is kind of universal and kind of quite useful. Now I'm just going to show you how to do some branching of code. I've got another report which I have written in the past, and I just wanted to show you one of the lines of code on that one. It's very simple, and it's an if then else type statement, so very similar to things we use in Excel or VBA. And here is the format of it. So to tell the script, Aspect script, that we're going to do an if then else statement, you use a question mark. So you can see this bit before the question mark. That's the thing that has a truth value, true or false. So it's saying on this particular report, which, and if you look up the source, the items which are being returned are invoices. And it's saying, is the amount on the invoice less than 0? And if the amount on the invoice is less than 0, that means that it must be a purchase type invoice or a creditor. So immediately after the question mark is the what to do if the conditional here is true, and it's going to return a credit, or CR, which is short for creditor. And then you can see there is what we call a colon in England. I know other countries aren't always familiar with that term, and I've heard it called a dot elsewhere, but a colon in England. And after that is the thing to return if it's false, and in this case it's DR. Can you see it's got inverted commas around it to say that it's literally text DR, and that's short for debtor. The only thing you have to watch for is you have to make sure that the type of thing you're returning, whether it's true or false, have to be of the same type. So in this case they're both text, and that's great. If one was a number, then the other one would have to be a number, and if one was a date, the other one would have to be a date. And that's kind of partially, or in my mind, that's logical, because over here, this format you're going to set must apply to whatever the answer is. So in this case, there's no format because it's text. And but if it was a number, if it was true, then this would say, oh, well, I need to have a number format here, but it needs to use the same format if it's false. And that's about the only complication with this one. So to see how that works, we'll just hit the execute button. There we go. And we'll look at the report. And what's happening, it's over here. So you can see in this column, sometimes it's credit and sometimes it's debit, and that's all it did. I want to talk a little bit now about breaking up the code into separate lines, and you can do that using this little sign here. By the way, this is the same report that we were looking at a moment ago. There's a line here that I think you might be interested in. So this sign here, which is a semicolon or a dot comma, as it might be called elsewhere, breaks up this block of code into two separate lines. And this is it's not very often that's very useful on reports, but it can be very useful on some of the other things that you can do, in particular workbooks. That workbooks need you to be able to do this. So I'll take you through the line. What it's trying to do, this is for a debtors and creditors report, and it breaks down the debtors and creditors into columns depending on their age. So it's an aged debtors report, really. So what this line does, it starts up this first bit here. What it says is that it's going to define a variable, and the variable is called ND, and it's a number type variable. So you start with this number and it goes blue. That's the only time that Aspect will colour something dark blue like that, and it's purple, which is the only time also that Aspect uses purple. It's when it's a variable defined by the user. And what I'm doing is I'm defining this variable as the days between the due date and the virtual date being the date that at the moment Aspect is running as if it's the current date. So I'm just putting to this ND stands for number of days, the number of days for that particular, that shows the age of that particular invoice item. So the second line in it is saying, well, look, and we're using this if then else command here, which you can see because of the question mark here. It says if ND is less than or equal to 30 and that's Aspects and, it's a double ampersand. So and ND is greater than 0, then, and what you do here is this formula here, I'm not going to go through it, but it just says how much of the invoice is still unpaid, and else 0, so the colon there, else 0. So that's how that works. And the reason why it's useful to do on this line is because it means that this section here where it says days between due date and virtual date, I don't have to repeat here. So I'm saying, basically I'm putting the result of that formula into here and again into here, and it saves it reduces the length of the whole line and makes it more readable and therefore more auditable. And you can check it and make it correct if it's not doing the thing you expect it to do first time. Now, the other thing to note actually is that this is the only time, and I've referred to this in a previous video, this is the only time that Aspect uses a single equals sign to set a variable. So just to show you, again, just to show how that works, I'll just execute the report. Show you what it's doing. And what that was, it's popping into this column here the value of the invoice if and only if the age of it is between, in fact it's this column, if and only the age is between 30 and 60 days. I'm going to end the video just there because it's getting quite long. And in the next video I'll go into the other thing which I mentioned actually at the beginning of this one that I would do, which is the more complex thing, and what this is about is linking terms in the scripts to each other when you've got one-to-many and many-to-one relationships, and just something a little bit more about that. So thank you for watching. Talk to you next time.